Today, we're jumping into something a bit different, an album quest. We're following this really fascinating methodology from Greensterox, who's on this, well, colossal search for the best album of all time.
Yeah, it's quite a concept. It takes looking at source material,
Yeah.
music albums, and turns it into almost like a competitive sport. The basic idea sounds simple enough, right? Take loads of albums, randomly sort them into groups of 4, like a World Cup draw. And then, this is the crucial bit, listen to them back to back. Repeatedly.
Right.
Then you have to rank them, pretty ruthlessly actually, from first down to fourth. Only the top 2 go through. The whole point isn't just finding albums you like, it's finding the ones that will hold up under that kind of intense, repeated listening. Who's really the best?
And that intensity, yeah, that seems key. We're focusing today on episode 130 of this album quest. The author called it West Coast Dreaming. And apparently the reviewer initially thought this group might be a bit of a slow burner, maybe predictable. But after going through those listening cycles, it turned out to be much closer than expected.
Yeah, that's where the method really shows its teeth. It forces these comparisons.
Definitely. It throws together albums you'd never normally put side by side. So, Group 130 had some huge names, different styles, different eras.
It really did. You had Eric Clapton's Slowhand classic rock feel, then Elton John's Songs from the West Coast, which is all about that songwriting craft.
And then completely different again, Eminem's The Eminem Show.
Right, massive hip-hop. And rounding it out, the best of From Everything But the Girl. It's a real mixed bag, which straight away makes you think, okay, how are we defining best here?
Okay, let's unpack how this pressure cooker, this album quest, played out for Group 130. Starting at the bottom, maybe surprisingly.
Yeah, definitely a surprise for some, finishing in 4th place, but, and this is important, the review stresses it was by the smallest of margins. Eric Clapton's Slowhand from 77.
Wow, okay, a classic like that finishing last.
Well, last in a very strong group, it seems. The source material actually had a lot of good things to say about it. Praise that, laid-back, groovy quality it has.
Sure, it's got Wonderful Tonight. Everyone knows that one.
Exactly. And Cocaine, too, though the reviewer actually preferred that one. They also mentioned May You Never was strong. But the real standout, according to the source, the track they singled out was the big one, The Core.
Oh, the 8-minute one.
That's the one. An 8-minute blues workout. That was highlighted as the absolute peak of the album.
So if it's got huge hits, plus a deep cut highlight like The Core, why fourth? Does the method penalize albums with standout moments if the rest isn't quite as strong?
That seems to be exactly it. What that back-to-back listening apparently reveals is consistency, or maybe slight inconsistency.
Oh, okay.
The source suggested that while the highs are really high, maybe some other tracks felt a little like filler when you listen to them immediately after, say, a track from the Eminem album or the Elton John one.
Right, when they're directly compared like that.
Exactly. In this kind of knockout round, even a slight dip in that overall track-to-track strength, it can cost you, even with brilliant peaks. So Clapton wasn't necessarily bad, just maybe fractionally less consistent across the whole runtime than the other 3. That tiny margin put him 4th.
That makes sense. It's a tough system. Okay, so climbing up just one spot, finishing 3rd, just missing out on advancing everything but the girl's best of.
Yeah, and this one immediately threw up a bit of a problem for the reviewer just by being a compilation.
A best of album in a competition for the best album.
Precisely. It raises that whole structural question, doesn't it? The reviewer seemed a bit confused. Like, are we judging the early folkish EBTG or the later, more sophisticated dance pop act?
Because they changed quite a bit over time.
Hugely. And then there were, as the review put it, serious question marks, because this best of had multiple remixes on it, and significantly several cover versions.
Okay. That feels like a sticking point for this kind of competition. If the goal is the best album by an artist, should remixes and covers count in the same way?
It's a tricky one. The source suggests that this kind of competitive format values a certain purity, a singular artistic statement. Remixes by other people or songs written by others kind of dilute that when you put it next to something like The Eminem Show, which is very much his vision.
I see.
But that said, the reviewer still acknowledged the quality of the music itself, called it a rather beautiful little collection that showed their range.
It does have Missing on it, which was massive.
Huge dance track, yeah. And they also praised an excellent cover, Simon and Garfunkel's The Only Living Boy in New York, so musically good stuff on there.
But the format worked against it in the end.
Pretty much. The source concluded it was good, enjoyable, but just not good enough for a top 2 spot in this specific context, probably because of those compilation issues.
Right. So that clears the elimination zone. Let's get to who actually advanced, taking the number 2 spot, securing a place in the next round, Eminem, with the Eminem Show.
Yeah, and what's interesting reading the review is this ongoing theme of just how consistently high Eminem's quality was, especially around this period. The reviewer seems really impressed by his ability to keep delivering.
And the Eminem Show definitely showed his range, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Massive breadth of material on that one.
You had those huge singles that were everywhere. The review called Without Me, the lead single, stupidly infectious.
Hard to argue with that one.
But then also tracks with real emotional depth like Cleaning Out My Closet, which the review described as having an almost melancholy feel.
Yeah, showing different sides. And beyond just the songs themselves, the review really focused on the production side, too. Yeah. Praised the originality of the sound, the, quote, amazing lyrics, which comes up a lot with Eminem reviews in this quest, and finding the best-fitting samples.
Like on Sing for the Moment?
Exactly, that Aerosmith sample. The review specifically mentioned how well that worked emotionally. But there was a key distinction made.
Okay.
The source felt that overall, the Eminem Show, while brilliant, was maybe just slightly weaker than his absolute peaks, like the Marshall Mathers LP or even Encore.
Right, so still incredibly strong, just maybe not peak Eminem.
Precisely. But even slightly off-peak Eminem was clearly strong enough to grab second place in this really tough group, still advancing comfortably.
Okay, which brings us to the winner of Group 130. Taking that top spot, praised for musical excellence and strong material, Elton John, with songs from the West Coast.
Yeah, from 2001. And this win really seems to highlight how important album structure the flow is in this back-to-back listening format.
How so?
Well, the reviewer was actually quite critical of the first 2 tracks, said they weren't great. You'd think that would be a disadvantage in this ranking system, right? A slow start.
You would, yeah. So how did it overcome that?
The middle section. The review stressed that the middle part of the album was very strong. Really strong. Mentioned a trio of tracks specifically. American Triangle, Original Sin, and especially I Want Love.
I Want Love was a big single from that album, too.
It was. And that strong core, that consistent quality through the middle, apparently built enough momentum to outweigh the weaker start and push it to the top.
And then it finishes strongly, too, doesn't it? With This Train Don't Stop There Anymore.
Exactly. That sort of lovely, melodic, looking back kind of track. It just cemented the win. It really underlines that idea in this album quest. Sustained quality across the whole record often beats having just a couple of massive hits. You need the whole package.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So, the final ranking for Group 130 ended up number 1, Elton John, number 2, Eminem, 3rd, Everything But the Girl, and 4th, Eric Clapton.
Correct. But there's another layer here, which is part of what makes following Greens Rocks' whole quest series so, well, addictive.
You mean the narrative threads that develop, like the Elton versus Eminem thing.
Exactly that. The source material points out that this result in Group 130 actually concluded what the author called a recent mini-battle between Elton and Eminem.
Okay. Had they faced off before in the quest?
Yeah, apparently they'd been drawn against each other, or their albums had advanced into the same stages 3 times prior to this group. And going into Group 130, the score between them stood at 2-1.
Okay, so one of them had the edge.
Right. But with Elton finishing first here and Eminem second.
Elton wins this round, so it levels the score.
Precisely. The overall head-to-head score between these 2 giants, completely different artists, and the wider album quest is now tied at 2-2.
Wow.
It adds this extra layer, doesn't it? It's not just reviewing albums in isolation. It's like following a sports league.
Yeah,
results
true.
Build on each other, create rivalries, history. It makes the whole analytical thing much more engaging.
It really does. So thinking about this group, Group 130, what does it tell us, maybe, as listeners trying to evaluate music or any kind of source material? We had this wild mix, rock, hip-hop, pop, compilations, all judged by the same strict rules. And it led to some, well, pretty surprising results, like Clapton getting eliminated.
I think the big takeaway is how this method highlights consistency. In a competitive setting like this, structure and sort of reliable execution across the board can often beat albums that have maybe bigger peaks but also deeper valleys.
Yeah, listening back to back really exposes any weaknesses.
Totally.
Yeah.
Any dip in quality just becomes glaringly obvious when it's sandwiched between strong tracks from other albums.
It definitely makes you question how we normally rank or think about albums. But before we wrap this up, that whole issue with the everything but the girl best of. That does raise a bigger question, doesn't it, about this kind of competitive
Oh,
analysis?
for sure. It's a recurring challenge in this album quest. How do you handle compilations, especially best-offs? When you're trying to find the single best album, does putting in remixes or covers or tracks spanning vastly different styles, does that dilute the idea of a pure, singular artistic statement?
Or, playing devil's advocate, maybe a best of is the truest representation. It shows the artist's range, their biggest hits, their evolution. Maybe that's a better measure of their overall strength than just one snapshot album.
It really forces you, the listener, or in this case, the reviewer, to define what best actually means in this context. Is it the absolute peak performance captured on one cohesive record? Or is it the sum of the highlights across a whole career, even if that includes outside influences or changes in direction?
Yeah, definitely something to chew on when you're thinking about your own favorite artists or albums. How would you rank them under these conditions?
Exactly. A good thought to leave things on.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for this album quest exploration. Thanks for diving in with us.